The morphine made everything soft around the edges, but it couldn't blur the sharp truth cutting through my chest. I lay flat on my back in room 314, staring at acoustic ceiling tiles that looked like cottage cheese, counting the holes in each square because counting was better than thinking about why my wife hadn't visited in 3 days. My name is Robert Waverly, and 6 weeks ago, I was framing houses and hauling 2x4s like they were toothpicks. Now I couldn't roll over without help from a nurse who smelled like hand sanitizer and disappointment. Spinal fusion surgery, they called it. L4 and L5 vertebrae fused together with titanium screws that cost more than my first truck. The surgeon, Dr. Harrison Cole, explained it like he was describing a home renovation project. Remove the damaged parts, reinforce the structure, wait for everything to heal stronger than before. 6 to 8 weeks of limited mobility, he'd said, adjusting his glasses. No lifting, no bending, no sudden movements. Think of yourself as a construction site. Everything's under renovation. Catherine had squeezed my hand during that conversation, her wedding ring clicking against mine. "We'll get through this together," she'd whispered, and I'd believed her because believing was easier than considering alternatives. That was 43 days ago. The physical therapist, a woman with forearms like a lumberjack and a sense of humor drier than sawdust, visited every morning at 9. She never told me her name, just called me Waverly, and made me do exercises that felt like torture disguised as healing. "Wiggle those toes," she'd command, watching my feet with the intensity of a hawk studying prey. "Good. Now flex your ankles, feel that? That's your nervous system remembering how to work." I felt it, all right. Pins and needles shooting up my legs, reminders that my body was slowly remembering how to be whole. But what I felt more was the absence in the chair beside my bed, the empty space where Catherine should have been sitting, reading me updates from the local paper or complaining about her real estate clients. Instead, I got excuses delivered through text messages. "Big showing today, can't make it until evening." "Client emergency, rain check?" "Exhausted from open house marathon, need sleep. See you tomorrow." Tomorrow kept getting pushed to the day after tomorrow, and the day after that stretched into a week of maybe next time. The irony wasn't lost on me. Catherine, who used to complain about being tired after grocery shopping, suddenly had energy for everything except visiting her husband. She could handle back-to-back showings, evening appointments, and weekend open houses, but somehow couldn't manage the 15-minute drive to Community General Hospital. "Your wife's got quite the schedule," Officer James Denton mentioned on his third security round of the week. He was ex-police, hired by the hospital to keep things quiet and safe. Mid-40s, gray at the temples, with the kind of observant eyes that missed nothing. "Saw her at Romano's restaurant Tuesday night. Looked like she was having a good time." I'd been staring at the ceiling, counting holes in tile number 47. "Romano's? She told me she was showing a house in Millfield." Denton adjusted his belt, the leather creaking softly. "Maybe she grabbed dinner after. It was late, around 9:30. "Who was she with?" The pause lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. "Didn't get a good look. Some guy in a suit." Some guy in a suit. In our town of 8,000 people, that narrowed it down to about 12 men, including the funeral director and the bank president. But something in Denton's tone suggested he'd gotten a better look than he was admitting. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, keeping my voice neutral. After he left, I lay there thinking about Romano's restaurant. Expensive place, cloth napkins and wine lists, the kind of spot where people went for anniversaries or celebrations. Not the kind of place Catherine would go alone after a house showing, especially not when she'd been claiming exhaustion for weeks. Dr. Cole stopped by during evening rounds, checking my incision and testing my reflexes with a rubber hammer that felt like a toy. "Healing's progressing nicely," he said, making notes on his tablet. "Pain levels? Manageable. Range of motion's improving. You're ahead of schedule, actually. Keep this up and we'll have you home in a week. Home. To the Victorian house Catherine and I had bought 3 years ago, the one with creaky floors and drafty windows that we'd planned to renovate together. The one where I'd been lying in bed for 6 weeks, dependent on her for everything from meals to medication, while she discovered a sudden passion for evening appointments. "Doc, can I ask you something?" He looked up from his tablet. "Shoot." How common is it for spouses to struggle when their partner's incapacitated? Cole's expression softened slightly. More common than you'd think. Caregiver fatigue is real, Robert. Some people handle it better than others. The stress can strain relationships. What if it's not stress? What if it's something else? He was quiet for a moment, studying my face. "Are you asking as a patient or as a husband?" "Both. As your doctor, I'd say focus on healing. Stress slows recovery. As someone who's been married for 22 years. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Trust your instincts. They're usually right." After he left, I reached for my phone and scrolled through Catherine's recent texts. Brief, efficient, businesslike. No, "I love you," or "miss you," or "can't wait to bring you home." Just updates and excuses, delivered with the emotional warmth of a weather report. The night shift nurse, Maria, brought my evening medication and helped me adjust my position. She'd been working here for 15 years and had the kind of practical wisdom that came from seeing everything twice. "Your wife coming by tonight?" she asked, checking my IV line. "Probably not, she's been busy." Maria nodded, but something in her expression suggested she had opinions about wives who were too busy to visit their hospitalized husbands. "My husband had his appendix out last year. I practically lived in this place for a week." Different people handle things differently. That they do. She finished her checks and headed for the door, then paused. "Mr. Waverly? Sometimes the hardest part of healing isn't the physical recovery. Sometimes it's accepting what we learn about people when we need them most." She left me alone with that thought and the sound of my own breathing. Outside my window, autumn rain tapped against the glass like fingers drumming impatiently. Somewhere in town, Catherine was having energy for everything except me, and I was starting to understand that my spine wasn't the only thing that needed reconstructing. I closed my eyes and began planning. Morning brought coffee that tasted like disappointment and a text message that confirmed my growing suspicions. "Running late, skipping morning visit. Big client wants to see 3 properties today. We'll try for tonight. XOXO. The kisses and hugs felt like punctuation marks on a form letter. I'd been married to Catherine for 8 years, and she'd never been a XOXO person. She was more likely to sign texts with C or nothing at all. The sudden affection felt like overcompensation, like someone trying too hard to appear normal. The physical therapist arrived precisely at 9, carrying her clipboard and wearing her usual expression of professional skepticism. "How's the pain today, Waverly?" "Tolerable." "Good. We're going to try sitting up for longer periods. Your core strength is coming back faster than expected." She helped me adjust the bed angle, her movements efficient and practiced. "You've got good muscle memory. Must have been in decent shape before the injury. Construction work keeps you strong." "What kind of construction?" "Custom homes, mostly. Some commercial renovation." I shifted carefully, testing my balance. I was working on a house foundation when my back gave out, lifting a beam I should have used machinery for. Pride comes before the fall, they say. Something like that. She put me through 20 minutes of exercises that left me sweating and cursing under my breath. Leg lifts, ankle rotations, careful torso twists that reminded me how many muscles were connected to my spine. Everything hurt, but it was the good kind of pain, the kind that meant healing was happening. "You're progressing well," she said, making notes. "Dr. Cole's right about being ahead of schedule. Another week, maybe 10 days, and you'll be ready for outpatient therapy." After she left, I used my phone to call Douglas Whitmore, my attorney. Doug had handled the legal work when Catherine and I bought our house, and he'd been a friend since high school. If anyone would give me straight answers, it was him. "Robert, how are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but the truck's backing up for another pass." "Doug, I need to ask you some questions about asset protection." "Asset protection? Everything all right with the business?" "The business is fine. This is personal." There was a pause, the kind that meant Doug was switching from friend mode to lawyer mode. "What kind of personal?" "Hypothetical. If someone wanted to protect their assets from a spouse who might be making poor decisions, what would be the best approach?" "Robert, are you and Catherine having problems?" I watched rain streak down my window, distorting the view of the parking lot. "Let's just say I'm learning things about my wife that I wish I wasn't learning." "I see. Well, hypothetically speaking, the key is documentation and timing. Any asset moves need to be done carefully, with proper legal justification. You can't just hide money or property out of spite. That'll backfire in divorce court." "What about joint accounts?" "Trickier. But if you have legitimate concerns about financial irresponsibility, there are ways to protect yourself. You'd need evidence, though, documented proof of problematic behavior. And if someone wanted to gather that evidence?" Doug was quiet for a long moment. "Robert, whatever you're thinking about doing, be careful. Surveillance, private investigators, that kind of thing. It can get messy fast and expensive. More expensive than losing half of everything I've worked for? That depends on how much you value your peace of mind." After I hung up, I lay there thinking about peace of mind. Mine had been shattered the moment Officer Denton mentioned seeing Catherine at Romano's with some guy in a suit. Now I needed to know who the guy was, and more importantly, what he meant to my wife. Denton appeared during his afternoon rounds, moving through the hallways with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent years watching people and reading situations. "How are you feeling today, Mr. Waverly?" "Better, getting stronger." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "That restaurant you mentioned, Romano's. You said you saw my wife there Tuesday night." "That's right. I've been thinking about it, and I'm pretty sure she was supposed to be showing a house that night, in Millfield, about 30 miles from Romano's." Denton nodded slowly. "Long way to drive for dinner. Especially when she's been claiming to be exhausted lately." I met his eyes. "You said you didn't get a good look at the guy she was with." "That's what I said. But you did recognize him, didn't you?" Denton glanced toward the door, then moved closer to my bed. When he spoke, his voice was lower, more careful. "I've been doing security work for 8 years, police work for 15 before that. I've learned when to speak up and when to keep my mouth shut. This is my wife we're talking about, which is exactly why I'm being careful." He was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "The man she was with lives on your street. 3 houses down, big colonial with the circular driveway." My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step going downstairs. 3 houses down, big colonial circular driveway. That was Marcus Thornton's house. Marcus, who owned the luxury car dealership on Route 9. Marcus, who'd been our neighbor for 2 years, who waved when he saw us in the yard, who'd brought over a casserole when I had my surgery. Marcus Thornton. I didn't say that name. You didn't have to. Denton adjusted his radio, the static crackling softly. "Mr. Waverly, I've seen a lot of things in my career. Some of them were my business, some of them weren't. This feels like the kind of thing that's going to become somebody's business real soon." "It already is." After he left, I stared at the ceiling and thought about Marcus Thornton. 45 years old, divorced 3 years ago, drove a different luxury car every month like he was test driving his own inventory. Handsome in that artificial way that money could buy. Perfect teeth, expensive haircuts, clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent. Catherine had mentioned him occasionally over the past year. Marcus is renovating his kitchen. Marcus got a new Porsche. Marcus invited us to his 4th of July party. I'd never paid much attention because Marcus seemed like the kind of neighbor who existed on the periphery of real life. Pleasant enough, but not particularly relevant. Now he was very relevant. I picked up my phone and called my business partner, Tommy Reeves. Tommy and I had been running Waverly Construction together for 6 years, and he'd been handling everything while I recovered. "Robert, how's the back?" "Getting there. Tommy, I need you to do me a favor." "Name it." "Drive by my house tonight around 8 o'clock. Park across the street, maybe in front of the Hendersons' place. Just sit there for a while. See what you see." "You want me to spy on your own house?" "I want you to observe my neighborhood. There's a difference." Tommy was quiet for a moment. "This have something to do with Catherine?" "Maybe." "Ah, hell. Robert, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry yet. Just drive by and tell me what you see." "You got it." The rest of the day passed slowly, each hour marked by small indignities. Help getting to the bathroom, assistants sitting up to eat, reminders that my body was still betraying me in fundamental ways. But my mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in weeks. Pain had a way of clarifying things, burning away everything except what mattered. What mattered was that my wife was lying to me. What mattered was that she was lying to me with Marcus Thornton. What mattered was that she thought I was too helpless to do anything about it. She was wrong about that last part. Tommy called at 9:30 that night, his voice careful and apologetic. "Robert, I've got some things to tell you, and none of them are good." "Tell me." "Marcus Thornton's car is in your driveway. Has been since I got there at 8. Kitchen lights are on, living room lights are on. I can see 2 people moving around inside." I closed my eyes, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. "Anything else?" "Catherine's car isn't there." "What do you mean it isn't there?" "I mean it's not in the driveway, not on the street, nowhere I can see. But Marcus's BMW is parked right where you usually park. So she was hiding her own car, probably in the garage, while Marcus parked in the driveway like he owned the place. Like he belonged there. Like I didn't exist." "Tommy?" "Yeah?" "Thanks for doing this. And Tommy, don't mention this to anyone else." "You got it, brother. And Robert, I'm sorry." After I hung up, I lay in the dark, listening to the hospital's nighttime sounds, distant conversations, elevator bells, the soft squeak of wheels on linoleum. Somewhere 3 miles away, my wife was entertaining my neighbor in my house, in my kitchen, probably sitting on my couch. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed that being immobile meant being powerless. Tomorrow, I would start proving her wrong. Dr. Cole made his rounds early, arriving with coffee and the kind of purposeful energy that meant good news. "Your latest X-rays look excellent," he said, clipping films to the light board. "Fusion is progressing ahead of schedule. How's your pain level?" "Manageable. Getting better every day." "Good. I'm thinking we can discharge you early next week, Monday or Tuesday, depending on how your weekend goes." I studied the X-rays, seeing the titanium screws that now held my spine together. They looked like tiny construction bolts, which seemed appropriate. "What about restrictions?" "You'll still need to take it easy for another month. No heavy lifting, no sudden movements. But you can walk, drive short distances, handle light activities." He turned from the light board, studying my expression. "You seem eager to get home." "It's been a long 6 weeks." "I imagine so. Your wife must be looking forward to having you back." "I'm sure she is." After he left, I called Douglas Whitmore again. This time, our conversation was more specific. "Doug, I need to move some money around, quietly and legally." "How much money?" "Most of it. I want to protect the business assets, and I want to move my personal funds into accounts that Catherine doesn't have access to." "Robert, that's a significant step. Are you sure about this?" "I'm sure." "All right. I can set up a business protection trust and move your personal assets into a separate account. But I'll need documentation of why you're doing this. Something that shows you have legitimate concerns about financial security." I thought about Marcus Thornton's BMW in my driveway, about Catherine's sudden energy for everything except visiting me, about the lies that were piling up like sawdust on a job site. I'll get you documentation. What kind of documentation? The kind that proves my wife is making decisions that put our financial security at risk. Doug was quiet for a moment. Robert, if you're planning what I think you're planning, be very careful. Divorce courts don't like it when spouses try to hide assets. I'm not hiding anything. I'm protecting what I've worked for. There's a fine line between those two things. I'll stay on the right side of the line. After I hung up, I called a number I'd found online, a private investigator named Janet Mills, who specialized in domestic cases. Her website was simple and professional, with testimonials from clients who'd discovered uncomfortable truths about their spouses. Mills Investigations, this is Janet. Ms. Mills, my name is Robert Waverly. I need to hire you for a surveillance job. What kind of surveillance? I think my wife is having an affair. I need proof. I see. Can you come to my office to discuss details? I'm in the hospital recovering from surgery. Can we handle this over the phone? Certainly. Let me ask you some questions. For the next 20 minutes, I provided Janet Mills with everything she needed. Catherine's schedule, Marcus Thornton's address, their likely meeting places, and my suspicions about their relationship. She was professional and thorough, asking questions I hadn't thought of and explaining exactly what kind of evidence would be useful. My rate is $75 an hour plus expenses, she said. A case like this typically requires 20 to 30 hours of surveillance, spread over a week or two. Money's not an issue. I just need proof. I'll start tonight. You should have preliminary results within 48 hours. The physical therapist arrived for my afternoon session, putting me through exercises that were noticeably easier than they'd been a week ago. My core strength was returning, my balance improving, my legs remembering how to support weight properly. You're making excellent progress, she said, watching me stand and take careful steps around the room. Another few days, and you'll be ready for real-world activities. How long before I'm back to normal? Define normal. Lifting, carrying, working construction. 3 months for full activity, but you'll be functional much sooner than that. She made notes on her clipboard. What's the first thing you want to do when you get home? I thought about that question as I lowered myself back onto the bed. The first thing I wanted to do was confront Catherine and Marcus, but that would be emotional and stupid. The smart thing was to gather evidence, protect my assets, and plan my next moves carefully. I want to check on my business, I said. Make sure everything's running smoothly. That's reasonable. Just remember to pace yourself. Officer Denton stopped by during his evening rounds, finding me sitting up in the chair beside my bed, working on my laptop. You're looking stronger, he observed. Feeling stronger, too. I should be out of here early next week. That's good news. He paused, then moved closer. Mr. Waverly, I hope you don't mind me asking, but have you given any thought to what you're going to do about your situation at home? I've given it considerable thought. And? I'm going to handle it properly, legally and carefully. Denton nodded approvingly. That's smart. I've seen too many domestic situations go sideways because someone acted on emotion instead of thinking things through. I'm past the emotional stage. Good. Because from what I've observed, your wife and her friend seem to think they're being careful. They're not. What do you mean? I mean they're creatures of habit. Same restaurant, same time of night, same parking spot. If I've noticed their pattern, other people have too. After he left, I sat in the growing darkness thinking about patterns and habits and the mistakes people made when they thought they were safe. Catherine had always been careful about details. She was a real estate agent after all, trained to notice things like curb appeal and structural problems. But she'd gotten careless about hiding her affair, probably because she assumed I was too helpless to investigate. My phone rang at 10:15. Janet Mills, calling with her first report. Mr. Waverly, I have some preliminary information for you. Go ahead. Your wife met Marcus Thornton at Romano's restaurant tonight at 8:30. They sat in a corner booth, ordered wine, appeared very comfortable with each other. Lots of touching, hand-holding, intimate conversation. My grip tightened on the phone. How intimate? They kissed twice during dinner, not friendly pecks, romantic kisses. After dinner, they drove separately to his house. I followed at a distance and confirmed that both vehicles are currently in his driveway. Both vehicles? Your wife's car is parked behind his house, probably trying to stay out of sight from the street. His car is in front. So Catherine was being more careful than Tommy had realized during his drive-by. She was hiding her car, but not well enough to fool a professional investigator. Ms. Mills, how long have you been doing this kind of work? 12 years. I've seen every variation of cheating spouse behavior you can imagine. In your professional opinion, how long has this been going on? Based on their comfort level with each other, their familiarity with the restaurant staff, and their body language, I'd estimate several months minimum. This isn't new. Several months. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to build our financial security, Catherine had been building a relationship with Marcus Thornton. While I'd been planning our future renovations, she'd been planning something else entirely. I'll continue surveillance tomorrow night, Janet said. But Mr. Waverly, I should warn you, this is going to get more difficult to watch as we gather more evidence. I can handle it. I hope so. Because from what I observed tonight, this isn't just a casual affair. These two people are planning something. After I hung up, I stared out my window at the parking lot, watching late-shift workers heading to their cars, normal people living normal lives dealing with normal problems. I envied them their ordinary troubles, flat tires and mortgage payments, and arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash. My problems were more complicated now. My wife was in love with another man, and they were planning something that probably involved my money, my house, and my future. But they'd made a crucial error in timing. They'd started their planning while I was immobilized, assuming I'd stay helpless long enough for them to finish whatever they were scheming. Instead, I was healing ahead of schedule, and I was planning too. Tomorrow, I would take the next step in protecting everything I'd worked for, and by the time Catherine and Marcus realized I was no longer the helpless invalid they thought I was, it would be too late for them to adjust their plans. The game had started 6 weeks ago when my back gave out, but I was about to change the rules. Saturday morning brought discharge papers and the kind of nervous energy that comes from knowing your life is about to change dramatically. Dr. Cole signed off on my release with the usual warnings about taking things slowly, while the physical therapist gave me a home exercise routine and strict instructions about lifting restrictions. Remember, your spine is still healing, she emphasized. No lifting anything heavier than a gallon of milk for another month. Understood. And Robert? Whatever's waiting for you at home, don't let stress slow your recovery. Your body needs rest to finish healing properly. I thanked her and meant it. Over the past 6 weeks, the hospital staff had become my allies in ways they probably didn't realize. They'd given me time to think, space to plan, and information that had proven invaluable. Tommy picked me up at noon, loading my few belongings into his truck with careful efficiency. You sure you want to go straight home? He asked as we pulled out of the hospital parking lot. You could stay with Susan and me for a few days, get your strength back. Thanks, but I need to face this head on. Robert, I've been thinking about what I saw the other night. Maybe there's an innocent explanation. I looked at him, this friend who'd been my business partner for 6 years, who'd kept our company running while I was laid up, who was still hoping for the best even when the evidence pointed toward the worst. Tommy, Catherine told me she was exhausted, too tired to visit her husband in the hospital, but she had energy to have dinner with Marcus Thornton at Romano's and energy to spend the evening at his house. What innocent explanation covers that? He was quiet for a long moment, navigating the familiar streets of our small town. I guess there isn't one. No, there isn't. My house looked exactly the same from the outside, white Victorian with green shutters, wraparound porch, the flower beds Catherine had planted last spring. But everything felt different as Tommy helped me up the front steps, like I was visiting a place I'd lived in a previous life. Catherine's car was in the driveway, which meant she was home, probably preparing for my return, getting ready to play the role of devoted wife, welcoming her husband back from the hospital. "You want me to come in with you?" Tommy asked. "No. This is something I need to handle alone. Call if you need anything. I mean it." I watched him drive away, then stood on my own front porch for a moment, gathering myself. 6 weeks ago, I'd been carried out of this house on a stretcher, helpless and dependent. Now I was walking back in under my own power, armed with knowledge and planning that Catherine couldn't imagine. The front door opened before I could reach for my keys. "Robert, you're home." Catherine appeared in the doorway, smiling brightly, wearing the blue dress I'd always liked. She looked beautiful and energetic and happy to see me, exactly like a wife should look when her husband returns from the hospital. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed the performance. "Hello, Catherine." She helped me inside, fussing over my movement, asking about pain levels and medication schedules. The house smelled like cleaning products and fresh flowers. She'd obviously spent the morning preparing for my homecoming. "I made your favorite soup," she said, guiding me toward the living room couch. "And I picked up those crackers you like from Peterson's Deli." I settled carefully onto the couch, testing my back against the cushions. Everything felt familiar but strange, like returning to a childhood home that had been rearranged by strangers. "Thank you. That was thoughtful." I felt terrible about missing so many visits this week. The real estate market has been absolutely crazy. 3 closings, 2 new listings, and that nightmare property on Elm Street that won't sell. She was talking too much, filling the silence with explanations and excuses. Guilty people always talk too much. "It's all right. I understand you've been busy." I have, but that's no excuse. You're my priority, especially while you're recovering. She sat beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. "I'm going to take better care of you now that you're home." "Actually, I'm feeling much stronger. Dr. Cole says I'm ahead of schedule." "That's wonderful. But you still need to rest. I've cleared my schedule for the next few days so I can focus on taking care of you." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Catherine had always been good at reading people. It was part of what made her successful in real estate. But she'd never been particularly good at hiding her own emotions. Right now, she looked nervous beneath the cheerful exterior. "You don't need to clear your schedule. I can take care of myself." "Nonsense. You just got out of the hospital." "Catherine, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How well do you know Marcus Thornton?" The change in her expression was subtle but unmistakable, a slight tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible pause before she answered. "Marcus. He's our neighbor." "Why?" "Just curious. Someone mentioned seeing him around town, and I realized I don't know much about him." "There's not much to know. He owns the car dealership, keeps to himself mostly. Why are you asking about Marcus?" "No particular reason." She was lying smoothly now, her real estate training kicking in, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands fidgeted with her wedding ring. "I should heat up that soup," she said, standing quickly. "You must be hungry." While she was in the kitchen, I looked around the living room with new eyes. Everything appeared normal, but there were small changes. Fresh flowers on the coffee table, new magazines I didn't recognize, a wine bottle and 2 glasses that had been hastily moved to the kitchen counter. 2 glasses. Catherine rarely drank wine, and never alone. My phone buzzed with a text message from Janet Mills. "Surveillance continuing tonight. We'll have more detailed report tomorrow." I deleted the message and put my phone away just as Catherine returned with soup and crackers on a tray. "Here we go," she said, settling the tray on my lap. "Chicken noodle, just like you like it." The soup was good, homemade, and warming. Catherine sat beside me while I ate, chattering about neighborhood news and upcoming real estate events. She seemed determined to fill every silence, to keep the conversation moving in safe directions. "Oh, I almost forgot," she said suddenly. "Marcus stopped by yesterday to ask about you. He wanted to know how your recovery was going. That was nice of him. He said to tell you he hopes you feel better soon. I'll have to thank him. Actually, he's having a small dinner party next weekend. Just neighbors. He invited us, but I told him you probably wouldn't be up for it." I looked at her carefully. "A dinner party?" "Nothing fancy. Just a few people from the neighborhood. But I thought it might be too much for you so soon after getting home." You might be right. That evening, Catherine made dinner, and we watched television together like a normal married couple. She was attentive and affectionate, asking about my comfort, adjusting pillows, bringing me water and medication. If I hadn't known about Marcus Thornton, I might have thought we were having a pleasant reunion. But I did know about Marcus Thornton, and I knew that Catherine was performing rather than living, acting the part of a devoted wife while planning something else entirely. At 10 o'clock, she announced she was tired and going to bed early. "All this stress about your recovery has worn me out," she said, kissing my forehead. "I need to catch up on sleep. I'll be up for a while, still getting used to being home. Don't stay up too late. Rest is important." She went upstairs, and I heard water running, drawers opening and closing, the sounds of someone getting ready for bed. 20 minutes later, the house was quiet. I waited another 30 minutes, then carefully made my way to the front window. The street was dark except for scattered porch lights, everything peaceful and suburban. Marcus Thornton's house was visible 3 doors down, his driveway empty, his windows dark. At 11:15, I saw Catherine's car backing quietly out of our garage. She drove with her headlights off until she reached the street, then turned toward downtown. Toward Romano's restaurant, most likely. Toward Marcus Thornton and whatever they were planning for my future. I returned to the couch and called Janet Mills. "She just left," I told her, driving toward downtown with no headlights. "I'm already in position. I'll follow and document everything." "Janet, when you said they were planning something yesterday, what did you mean?" Their conversation was intense. Lots of serious discussion, checking phones, looking at papers. This wasn't just a romantic dinner. They were conducting business. What kind of business? That's what I intend to find out. After I hung up, I sat in my own living room, in my own house, feeling like a stranger in my own life. 6 weeks of immobility had changed everything, revealing truths I'd been too busy to notice before. Catherine wasn't just having an affair. She was planning something that required secrecy, coordination, and careful timing, something that involved my recovery, my return home, and my future. But whatever Catherine and Marcus were planning, they'd made one crucial miscalculation. They'd assumed I would remain the helpless, dependent invalid they'd been dealing with for 6 weeks. Instead, I was healing faster than expected, thinking more clearly than they realized, and planning more carefully than they could imagine. By the time they discovered their mistake, it would be too late to adjust their strategy. The game was about to change, and I intended to win. Sunday morning arrived with autumn rain and a text message that confirmed my worst suspicions. Overslept at Angela's house after girls' night. Home soon with breakfast. Hope you slept well. Angela was Catherine's friend from the real estate office, a convenient alibi for late nights and suspicious absences. But Janet Mills had already sent me photos from the previous evening. Catherine and Marcus at Romano's again, then driving to his house, her car parked behind his garage until 3 in the morning. Catherine arrived home at 9:30 with bagels from downtown and the kind of guilty energy that comes from lying about something important. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, bustling into the kitchen with unnecessary urgency. Angela needed to talk about her divorce, and we lost track of time. You know how it is. I do now. She glanced at me sharply, but I kept my expression neutral. No point in tipping my hand before I had all the evidence I needed. How are you feeling this morning? Any pain? Much better. I think I'm ready to start getting back to normal activities. That's wonderful, but don't push yourself too hard. We ate breakfast together while Catherine chattered about Angela's marital problems, creating an elaborate fiction about their evening together. She was good at details, weaving in specific conversations and timeline elements that would be difficult to verify. A professional liar, trained by years of real estate negotiations. I should probably call Angela later, I said casually. Thank her for keeping you company. Catherine's hand paused halfway to her coffee cup. Oh, she's probably sleeping late. Last night was pretty emotional for her. Of course. After breakfast, I announced that I wanted to walk around the neighborhood, test my strength, and get some fresh air. Catherine offered to come with me, but I insisted on going alone. I need to prove to myself that I can handle simple activities, I said, part of the psychological recovery. Just be careful, and don't go too far. I walked slowly down our street, noting details I'd never paid attention to before. The Hendersons' house where Tommy had parked for surveillance, the Miller's place with the perfect view of our driveway, and Marcus Thornton's colonial with its circular driveway and expensive landscaping. His BMW was parked in front, freshly washed and gleaming in the weak sunlight. As I approached, Marcus himself emerged from the house, dressed in casual clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Robert, good to see you up and around. He walked over with the kind of confident smile that suggested he had nothing to hide. How are you feeling? Much better, thanks. Getting stronger every day. That's great to hear. Catherine's been so worried about you. I studied his face, looking for signs of guilt or deception. Marcus was handsome in that polished way that money could buy, but there was something calculating in his eyes, like a salesman evaluating a potential customer. She's been very attentive, I said, though I know she's been busy with work. Real estate never sleeps, right? I see her coming and going at all hours. Do you? Well, we're neighbors. Hard not to notice. I suppose that's true. We stood there for a moment, two men who knew more about each other than they were admitting. Marcus was confident, probably assuming that Catherine had told him everything about my condition and capabilities. He saw a recently hospitalized man, still weak and dependent, posing no threat to his plans. Catherine mentioned you're having a dinner party next weekend, I said. That's right. Nothing fancy, just a few neighbors getting together. You're both welcome, of course, but Catherine thought you might not be up for it yet. She knows me well. She's a remarkable woman. You're lucky to have her. The way he said it, with just a hint of possessiveness, confirmed everything I needed to know. Marcus Thornton wasn't just having an affair with my wife, he was planning to keep her. I should get back, I said, still building up my stamina. Of course. Take care of yourself, Robert. I walked home slowly, processing the conversation. Marcus was arrogant, confident, and completely unaware that I knew about his relationship with Catherine. He was also territorial, marking his claim on my wife right to my face. That afternoon, Janet Mills called with her detailed report. I have extensive documentation from last night, she said. Photos, timeline, location details. Your wife met Marcus Thornton at Romano's at 8:15. They had dinner until 10:30, then went to his house. She didn't leave until 2:45 in the morning. What were they discussing? I couldn't hear their conversation, but they spent a lot of time looking at documents. Papers spread across the table, both of them taking notes. This wasn't just a romantic evening. Could you see what kind of documents? Real estate papers, from what I could tell. Property listings, financial forms, that sort of thing. Real estate papers. Catherine was planning something that involved property, finances, and careful documentation. Combined with her lies about my recovery timeline and her sudden interest in my limitations, a picture was beginning to form. Janet, I need you to do something else for me. Can you research Marcus Thornton's financial situation? Business records, property holdings, anything public? Certainly. What am I looking for? I want to know if he's in any kind of financial trouble, and I want to know about any recent real estate transactions he's been involved in. I'll have that information for you tomorrow. That evening, Catherine announced that she needed to work late on a contract review. Big commercial property, she explained. The buyer wants to close next week, so I need to go over everything tonight. Will you be at the office? Probably, or maybe at Angela's. She's helping me with the paperwork. Angela's been very helpful lately. Catherine looked at me sharply again, but I maintained my innocent expression. Let her wonder what I knew and when I'd figured it out. She left at 7:30, kissing my cheek and reminding me to take my medication. I waited until her car disappeared, then called Tommy. I need another favor, I said. Name it. Can you come over and help me with something? I want to go through some of our financial records, make sure everything's in order. Sure. Is everything all right? I'm not sure yet. That's what I want to find out. Tommy arrived 30 minutes later, and we spent the evening going through files, bank statements, and property records. What we found was disturbing but not surprising. Catherine had been moving money from our joint savings account into a separate account I didn't have access to. Small amounts over several months, probably hoping I wouldn't notice during my recovery. She'd also been researching the value of our house, getting estimates and market analyses that suggested she was planning to sell. Robert, this looks like someone preparing for divorce, Tommy said, studying the paperwork. Or worse. What do you mean, worse? I thought about Marcus Thornton's confidence, Catherine's careful lies, and the real estate documents Janet Mills had observed. I think they're planning to force me out, I said. Use my medical condition as grounds for incompetency, take control of my assets, and divide everything between them. Can they do that? If they can prove I'm unable to make financial decisions due to my injury, they might be able to get a conservatorship. Catherine would be the natural choice as my spouse. Tommy was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the implications. That's not just theft, Robert. That's evil. Yes, it is. We finished going through the records, documenting everything Catherine had done, and preparing copies for Douglas Whitmore. By the time we were done, I had a clear picture of my wife's strategy. She'd been planning this for months, probably since before my injury. The affair with Marcus was just part of a larger scheme to take control of my assets and my life. They'd been waiting for the right opportunity, and my spinal surgery had provided it. But they'd miscalculated in one crucial way. They'd assumed I would remain helpless long enough for them to complete their plan. Instead, I was recovering faster than expected, and I was fighting back harder than they could imagine. Catherine came home at midnight, claiming exhaustion from her contract review. She went straight to bed without saying much, probably tired from her real evening activities. I lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and thinking about justice. Catherine and Marcus had made their choices, revealed their true characters, and shown me exactly what kind of people they really were. Now it was time for them to face the consequences. Tomorrow, I would begin implementing my own plan. And unlike theirs, mine would actually work. Monday morning brought clarity and purpose. I woke early before Catherine and made coffee in the kitchen where she'd entertained Marcus Thornton while I lay helpless in a hospital bed. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was stronger now than I'd been in months, while she thought I was still the dependent invalid she'd been manipulating. Catherine appeared at 7:30, already dressed for work, moving with the efficient energy of someone who had places to be and people to deceive. "How did you sleep?" she asked, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "Very well. I think being home is helping my recovery." "That's wonderful. I have 3 showings today, so I'll be out most of the afternoon. Will you be all right alone? I'll be fine. Actually, I'm thinking about driving over to the job site, checking on the crew. Her hand paused on the coffee pot. Are you sure that's wise? Dr. Cole said to take things slowly. Just a short drive. I need to start getting back to normal activities. Maybe wait another week or two? Catherine, I've been immobilized for 6 weeks. I need to start reclaiming my life. She looked at me carefully, probably trying to assess whether my increasing independence threatened her timeline. Of course, just promise me you'll be careful. I promise. After she left, I called Douglas Whitmore and arranged to meet at his office. Then I called Janet Mills and asked for her research on Marcus Thornton's finances. What she told me was illuminating. Marcus Thornton is in serious financial trouble, she reported. His car dealership has been losing money for 2 years. He's behind on his business loan payments, and the bank is threatening foreclosure. He's also leveraged his house to the maximum, one missed payment away from losing everything. So he needs money. Desperately. And there's something else. He's been researching disability law and conservatorship procedures, downloaded forms, visited legal websites, the whole thing. When? Starting about 3 months ago, right around the time your wife began moving money out of your joint accounts. The timeline confirmed my suspicions. Catherine and Marcus had been planning this scheme since long before my injury. They'd been waiting for an opportunity, and when my back gave out, they'd seen their chance. But they'd underestimated both my recovery and my determination. I drove to Douglas Whitmore's office, testing my ability to handle normal activities. My back was stiff but manageable, my reflexes sharp, my thinking clearer than it had been in weeks. Dr. Cole was right. I was ahead of schedule in every way that mattered. Doug's office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian downtown, all dark wood and leather chairs that suggested old-fashioned competence. He'd been practicing law in our town for 25 years, handling everything from property disputes to criminal defense. Robert, you look much better than I expected, he said, settling behind his desk with the files I'd brought. I feel better than expected. Good. Now let's talk about what you've discovered. For the next hour, I laid out everything: Catherine's affair, the financial irregularities, Marcus Thornton's research into conservatorship law, and their apparent plan to take control of my assets. Doug listened without interruption, taking notes and asking occasional clarifying questions. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled softly. This is more sophisticated than most domestic fraud cases, he said. They've been planning this for months. Can they actually do what they're attempting? If they could prove you were mentally or physically incompetent due to your injury, yes. A conservatorship would give Catherine legal control over your finances and property, and if you were declared incompetent, any asset transfers you made after your injury could be challenged. But I'm not incompetent. Obviously not. But they don't know that you know what they're planning. In their minds, you're still the helpless patient they've been manipulating. What are my options? Doug opened a legal pad and began writing. First, we protect your assets immediately. Transfer everything into accounts they can't access, preferably today. Second, we document their fraud thoroughly. I'll need copies of everything you've gathered. Third, we prepare for their next move. What will their next move be? Based on what you've told me, they'll probably try to have you declared incompetent within the next few weeks. They'll claim your injury has affected your judgment, point to your recent asset transfers as evidence of impaired thinking, and petition for a conservatorship. And then? Catherine becomes your legal guardian, takes control of everything you own, and you become a ward of the state. Legally speaking, you'd have no more rights than a child. The implications were staggering. If their plan had worked, I would have lost everything: my business, my house, my independence, my future. I would have become a prisoner in my own life, dependent on Catherine's goodwill for basic necessities. Doug, I want to file for divorce immediately. That's premature. If you file now, it tips them off that you know what they're planning. Better to let them make the first move. then respond with everything we've got. So what do? You continue pretending to be the recovering invalid they think you are. Let them proceed with their plan. When they file for conservatorship, we'll be ready with evidence of their fraud, their affair, and their conspiracy to steal your assets. How long will that take? Probably another week or two. They'll want to move soon, before you recover too much. I left Doug's office with a detailed legal strategy and a clear understanding of what was at stake. Catherine and Marcus weren't just stealing my money, they were trying to steal my entire life. But they'd made one crucial error. They'd assumed I would remain passive and helpless while they destroyed me. That afternoon, I drove to the bank and transferred most of my personal assets into new accounts that Catherine couldn't access. Then I visited my business accountant and restructured Waverly construction to protect it from any legal challenges. By evening, I'd moved nearly everything I owned beyond Catherine's reach. When Catherine came home that night, I was sitting in the living room reading a book, playing the role of recovering patient. "How was your day?" she asked, settling beside me on the couch. Quiet. I drove to the job site for a few minutes just to check on things. "How did that go?" "Fine, but I got tired quickly. I'm not as strong as I thought." Relief flickered across her face. "Recovery takes time. Don't push yourself." "You're right. I should probably take things even slower." "That's very wise." We had dinner together, watched television, and maintained the fiction of a normal marriage. Catherine was attentive and caring, probably congratulating herself on how well she was managing the situation. If only she knew that while she'd been planning my destruction, I'd been planning her exposure. If only she realized that her devoted, helpless husband was about to become her worst nightmare. Janet Mills called at 10:30 with an update. "They're meeting again tomorrow night," she reported. "Same restaurant, same time. But there's something else. Marcus Thornton visited a law office this afternoon, stayed for over an hour." "Which law office?" "Brennan and Associates. They specialize in elder care and disability law. Conservatorship proceedings." That would be my guess. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness thinking about timing and strategy. Catherine and Marcus were accelerating their timeline, probably planning to file their conservatorship petition within days. But I was ready for them. Tomorrow, I would take the next step in my own plan. And by the time they realized what was happening, it would be far too late to stop me. The game was entering its final phase, and I intended to win decisively. Catherine thought she was married to a helpless invalid. She was about to discover she'd been living with a very dangerous adversary. Tuesday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everything seem possible. I woke early, made coffee, and reviewed my strategy one final time. Today would determine whether Catherine and Marcus succeeded in destroying my life or whether I succeeded in exposing theirs. Catherine left for work at her usual time, reminding me to rest and avoid overexertion. She seemed nervous, checking her phone repeatedly and making several hushed calls before heading out the door. "Big day?" I asked. "Just the usual real estate chaos. I might be late tonight, showing a property to some out-of-town buyers." "Of course." After she left, I called Janet Mills. "They're definitely meeting tonight," she confirmed. "But this time, it's not at Romano's. Marcus made a reservation at the Lakeside Inn. Much more private out of town. This feels like a celebration dinner. Or a final planning session. Either way, they're confident about something." I spent the morning at Tommy's house, finalizing the last details of my counterattack. We reviewed documents, confirmed timing, and made sure everyone knew their role in what was about to happen. "You sure about this?" Tommy asked as we finished our preparations. "Completely sure. It's going to get ugly." "It already is ugly. I'm just making it visible." That afternoon, I received the call I'd been expecting. Douglas Whitmore, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Robert, they just filed. Conservatorship petition. claiming you're mentally incompetent due to your injury and medication. They're requesting an emergency hearing for Thursday morning. What's their evidence? They claim you've been making irrational financial decisions, talking about conspiracy theories, and showing signs of paranoid behavior. Catherine provided a statement saying you've been acting erratically since returning from the hospital. And Marcus? He's listed as a concerned neighbor who's witnessed your deteriorating condition. They've also got a doctor's statement, not from Dr. Cole, but from some psychiatrist who's never actually examined you. A bought opinion. Exactly. But Robert, this is serious. If they convince a judge that you're incompetent, you could lose everything before we get a chance to present our evidence. Don't worry, they're not going to convince anyone of anything. What do you mean? You'll see Thursday morning. That evening, Catherine made a show of preparing for her late showing, gathering property files and checking her appearance in the hallway mirror. I should be home by 11, she said, kissing my cheek. There's leftover soup in the refrigerator if you get hungry. Have a good showing. Thanks. And Robert? Try to get some rest. You've seemed a little stressed lately. After she left, I made a series of phone calls. To Janet Mills, confirming surveillance positions. To Tommy, reviewing final logistics. To Officer James Denton, who'd agreed to help with one crucial element of my plan. Everything's set, Denton confirmed. I'll be in position by 9:30. And the recording equipment? Tested and ready. Audio quality should be excellent. At 9 o'clock, I drove to the Lakeside Inn, parking in a spot that gave me a clear view of the restaurant entrance. Janet Mills was already in position across the parking lot, her camera equipment ready to document whatever happened inside. Catherine and Marcus arrived separately, meeting in the lobby before being seated at a corner table. Through the restaurant windows, I could see them talking animatedly, papers spread between them, both looking pleased and confident. They were celebrating prematurely. At 9:45, Officer Denton appeared beside my car. They're talking about the hearing, he said, adjusting his earpiece. Very confident they're going to win. Catherine just said, by Friday, everything will be ours. And Marcus? He's talking about selling your house, liquidating your business assets. They've already picked out a care facility where they plan to put you after the conservatorship is approved. A care facility. They weren't just planning to steal my assets. They were planning to warehouse me in some institutional setting where I'd be completely under their control. Keep recording, I said. I want everything documented. For the next hour, Denton provided a running commentary on their conversation. Catherine and Marcus discussed dividing my assets, selling my property, and managing my care in ways that would maximize their profit. They talked about my supposed mental deterioration, laughing about how easy it had been to manipulate me. Marcus just said he never suspected a thing, Denton reported. Even when he came home early, he was too drugged and confused to figure it out. And Catherine? She said, the injury was perfect timing. Another few months and he might have discovered the missing money. They finished dinner at 11:15, paying with cash and leaving separately. Catherine drove straight home, while Marcus headed back to his house, both of them confident that their plan was proceeding perfectly. Catherine arrived home at 11:30, finding me reading in the living room. How was the showing? I asked. Exhausting. The buyers were very demanding, wanted to see everything twice. She sat beside me, yawning dramatically. I'm completely worn out. You should get some rest. I will. Big day tomorrow, lots of paperwork to finish. I'm sure. Wednesday passed quietly, with Catherine maintaining her facade of concerned wife while secretly preparing for Thursday's hearing. She made several phone calls, speaking in hushed tones about medical evidence and witness statements. That evening, she announced that she had another late appointment. Property inspection, she explained. Should only take a couple of hours. But I knew she was meeting with her attorney, reviewing strategy for the next morning's hearing. Janet Mills confirmed it, following Catherine to the law offices of Brennan and Associates, where she spent 2 hours in final preparation. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of weather that seemed appropriate for what was about to happen. Catherine left early, claiming she had paperwork to finish before her first appointment. "I might not see you until this evening," she said. "Very busy day scheduled." "I understand. Take your medication, get some rest, and try not to worry about anything." "I won't worry." At 9 o'clock, I drove to the courthouse, where Douglas Whitmore was waiting with a briefcase full of evidence and a grim smile. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready." The conservatorship hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock in Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom. Judge Morrison was known for her no-nonsense approach to legal proceedings and her particular distaste for fraud. Catherine and Marcus arrived at 9:50, accompanied by their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who specialized in elder law. Catherine looked nervous but determined, while Marcus appeared confident and relaxed. They were expecting to face a confused, medicated invalid who couldn't effectively defend himself. Instead, they were about to encounter something entirely different. "All rise," the bailiff announced, the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Judge Morrison took the bench, reviewed the petition, and called the hearing to order. "This is a request for emergency conservatorship," she began. "The petitioners claim that Robert Waverly is mentally incompetent due to injury and medication, and requires a legal guardian to manage his affairs." Catherine's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, we have extensive evidence of Mr. Waverly's deteriorating mental condition. Medical records, witness statements, and documentation of irrational financial behavior." "I see. And where is Mr. Waverly?" "We weren't certain he'd be able to attend, Your Honor. His condition has been quite unstable." "Actually," Douglas Whitmore said, standing up, "Mr. Waverly is here and ready to defend himself." I walked into the courtroom, moving confidently and clearly in control of my faculties. Catherine's face went white when she saw me, while Marcus looked confused and alarmed. "Mr. Waverly," Judge Morrison said, "how are you feeling today?" "Excellent, Your Honor. Much better than my wife apparently expected." "I see. And you're here to contest this conservatorship petition?" "I am. And I have evidence that this entire proceeding is based on fraud." For the next hour, Douglas Whitmore systematically destroyed Catherine and Marcus's case. He presented financial records showing Catherine's theft, surveillance photos documenting their affair, and audio recordings of their conversations about dividing my assets. The psychiatrist who'd provided the incompetency opinion admitted under oath that he'd never actually examined me, while Catherine's claims about my mental deterioration crumbled under cross-examination. "Your Honor," Douglas concluded, "this isn't a conservatorship case. This is an attempted theft of my client's assets by his wife and her accomplice, disguised as a medical proceeding." Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "Mrs. Waverly," she said finally, "do you have anything to say in your defense?" Catherine stood shakily, her confidence completely shattered. "Your Honor, I was only trying to help my husband. His injury affected his judgment, and I was worried about our financial security." "By stealing his money and planning to institutionalize him? That's not... I never intended... Mr. Thornton, what's your role in this conspiracy?" Marcus had gone pale, realizing that his financial desperation had led him into criminal territory. "Your Honor, I was just trying to help Catherine during a difficult time by researching conservatorship law and planning to divide stolen assets." The hearing concluded with Judge Morrison dismissing the conservatorship petition and referring the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Catherine and Marcus left the courthouse facing charges of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted theft. I walked out a free man, my assets protected and my life restored. That evening, I sat in my living room, my house, my property, my sanctuary, thinking about justice and recovery. Catherine had moved out that afternoon, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind the wreckage of 8 years of marriage. Marcus Thornton's car dealership was already facing foreclosure, his financial crimes having accelerated his business collapse. Both of them would be dealing with legal consequences for years to come. My phone rang. Dr. Cole, calling to check on my recovery. "Robert, I heard about what happened today. How are you feeling?" "Stronger than I've felt in years." "Good. And you're back?" "Healing perfectly. Turns out stress was slowing my recovery more than I realized." "Stress has a way of affecting everything. Now that it's resolved, you should heal even faster." After I hung up, I walked out onto my front porch and looked down the street toward Marcus Thornton's house. The driveway was empty, the windows dark, a for sale sign already planted in the front yard. Tomorrow, I would return to work, rebuilding my business and my life. I would finish healing, both physically and emotionally, stronger than I'd been before the injury. Catherine and Marcus had thought they were stealing from a helpless invalid. Instead, they'd awakened something far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The game was over.